the proposition.
President, thank you for inviting me. It's a great pleasure to be here on a Friday night. I'm impressed that you're all here on a Friday night. It shows seriousness of purpose, so I feel I have a kindred audience straight away. We take ethics seriously. Let me get some things out of the way quickly. First, the first speaker spent some time defending democracy. I take it that we're all at one that democracy is a good thing. I agree with that. That is not the issue, whether democracy is a good thing or not. The issue tonight is with another word in the proposition, and that word is impose. So I've got something to say about that word impose. The motion is the West has a duty to impose democracy. Now, in what I say, I'm going to be interested in the ethical arguments and not in looking at case studies like Afghanistan and Iraq and whether they've been good or bad. Now, as the world is today, 193 sovereign states, there are many states which have military muscle to intervene in the affairs of weak states, many of which are not democratic or not properly democratic. Ethical questions only arise, of course, when it is possible for an actor to do something. And in the world as it is today, there are many strong states who have the ability to do something about in other weak states. Now, so the point here is that ought implies can. I've got no duty to feed the little green starving men on Mars because I can't do anything about them. However, ought implies can, but that states and individuals can do certain things doesn't mean that when they do those things are the right thing to do. There's an argument to be had about what things we can do, we ought to do. I hope all of that is quite obvious. For example, rapists can do certain kind of things, but they shouldn't do what they do. And the fact that they do sometimes do that thing is no commendation of an ethical kind, of course. In like fashion, states can do certain things, they can intervene in foreign states, but the fact that they sometimes do, as has happened in Iraq, Afghanistan and other places, the mere fact that they do doesn't indicate that it was the right thing to do. So the question on the table is, just listen to this question again. When, if ever, ought the West to impose democracy on others? This is a sub-question which arises in the wake of a much bigger question about the ethicality of armed intervention in general. This question about armed intervention in general came to prominence at the end of the Cold War, a time that I remember very well. Because prior to that, intervention was really dangerous because it might trigger a global conflagration between the superpowers. Suddenly, after the Cold War, that fear was gone, and it looked possible that the good guys, namely democracies, could do some stuff in places that weren't democracies. They could flex their muscles, or so it seemed. So, let's get back to the question. The West has a duty to intervene, to promote democracy, to impose democracy. Now, that's a curious question, isn't it? It suggests that other states who are not Western don't have such a duty. In other words, strong military states in the East, the question would suggest, don't have a duty to promote democracy. Now, that does seem a bit weird, doesn't it? Maybe the South has a duty, or imagine if China proceeded to impose democracy in various places. Britain might have some objections to it. It seems to me the question should be reformulated to, this House proposes that those who can should impose democracy. It seems to me, and I'm going to argue the case, that there's a clear ethical answer to this question, which is that they should not do that. This answer is slightly problematic because I think an even stronger proposition should be put forward, which is that not only should they not attempt to impose democracy, but that, in fact, they cannot impose democracy. Democracy is not a form of government that can be imposed. Why not? The answer to this question is interesting and important. We ought not and cannot impose democracy because democracy is a constitutive relationship between people within a state and between the democratic state itself and other democratic states. A democracy is an arrangement within which citizens accord to one another a certain kind of recognition. They give to one another a status which allows each to participate in the business of electing the government that has authority over them and gives them the standing to hold their government to account. Constitutive relationships are reciprocal. We in democracies recognize one another in certain ways. This form of mutual recognition cannot be imposed at the end of a barrel of a gun.